Welcome to Chris McDaniel's America, here on the Midnight Ride Network, your home of the anti-establishment movement in this country. With me, as always, Jack Fairchild. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Chris.
Interesting day. The show almost did not take place as anticipated, at least with my presence. Let me give you a quick update as to what happened. So this afternoon, my youngest, my 12-year-old, Chamberlain, was on his mountain bike, and I tried to tell him I was a better biker. I tried to tell him not to try certain things, but sure enough, he got too fast and was able or managed to crash. And unfortunately, he broke his left arm. And I was at the emergency room earlier, and the pain is under control. Everything's fine. It wasn't, I don't think it's compound. It wasn't showing. It looks like it's going to be set pretty easily, and he'll be back to good order in some time. But he was really upset, as you can imagine. It scared him. If there is good news, thank God it wasn't anything more serious.
Yeah.
I bought him a helmet the other day, and I believe in safety when it comes to riding bikes, because even as a young kid, you hit your head on that cement and you have all sorts of other problems. But thank God it was only an arm, and thank God he's being treated. And thank God for morphine. It took the pain right away from him, and that made me as a dad feel so much better, because the one thing that's just so tough as a parent or for a parent is watching your kids hurt.
Yeah.
It's just hard to explain. I would take all that pain away if I could, and it's bad enough to see them hurt mentally or emotionally, but when you're physically hurting and you see a combination of all those things, it really hits home. So he's going to be okay. I'll keep you all advised. I'll probably post later on social media to let you know what's going on. Lord willing, he'll come home tonight. It'll be okay. So, but we made it through that crisis, and we're here at the show because we have responsibilities, and I think it's important that we maintain them as best we can. Speaking of responsibilities, who is running Harris's campaign?
Not sure.
Because I thought she was the Democratic nominee for president. She didn't have to fight in a primary to get there. Basically gifted this honor, if you will. And as part of the gift, I'm sure she's supposed to have the very best Democrat strategist, the very best campaign people behind her. But it's just not translating. And here you are just a few days out. And, you and I spent last week trying to tell Republicans just to not talk about crazy stuff.
Yep.
Focus on the things that matter, the inflation and the economy and the border and crime. Focus on those issues, and we win this race. And I'm sure the Democrats have had those meetings, and I'm sure they're like, look, Ms. Harris, we know you like to laugh a lot. How about tone it down? Number one, how about when you do say something, don't use that word salad you always use and come back with the nonsense. But three, try not to offend Christians.
Yeah.
Christians make up 2/3 of the population in America. 1/4 of those are our Catholic brothers and sisters. And the idea should be, if you're running a race, yes, Ms. Harris, you're going to nail down African-American evangelicals. I'm pretty sure you've got that group.
Yeah.
So what you need, especially in some of these swing states or some of these Catholics that may kind of be on the fence. Now, Catholics are very pro-life, obviously. Most are very pro-life. But you do have a segment of that population as well that tend toward the Democratic Party for whatever reason. And we've seen that for years, especially in the bigger cities. So she's given a speech at a campaign stop. And sure enough, was this staged? I don't know. Does it really matter? Because her response was, in my mind, really difficult.
Yeah.
Someone yells, "Jesus is Lord." Well, I've given a lot of speeches in my life, and I've been in places where people yell all sorts of things. Some good, some bad.
I've seen it.
But if somebody yells Jesus is Lord and you're in a country, listen, don't kid yourself. This country was founded on strong Judeo-Christian principles, on a strong Judeo-Christian foundation. I'm not suggesting there was a theocracy created. I'm not suggesting people were made to worship, but to discount the role of Christianity in this society, you're doing a disservice to history and to this country's origins. So you're in a place, you're trying to get votes, it's a super tight race, someone yells, Jesus is Lord, a dozen ways she could have handled that. I'll give you an example. You're right. And I tell you, Jesus would be appalled at some of the things he's heard Donald Trump say. She could have transitioned this a million different ways.
Yeah.
That's not what she did. She said, basically, you guys are at the wrong rally. Now, that's a tongue-in-cheek comment. And I know what she meant because sure enough, down the street, there was another rally happening, and she made a mockery of that. She goes, you guys are at the wrong rally, and blah, 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 blah. It's a smaller rally down the street where you're supposed to be.
Oh, wow.
But just stop right there, though. Say it's tongue-in-cheek. Say it's off the cuff. Consider the bigger ramifications of the statement. This lady, this woman, really close to being the President of the United States. We hope not. We hope Republicans prevail in a couple of weeks, but she's halfway there, it appears, right?
Yeah.
And you have a chance to basically do what every politician's done for the last 200 years when they're faced with a religious question, and that is embrace it. Look at me now, focus with me. Embrace it. She didn't. What's her real mindset? The audience cheered. They went crazy. They thought it was a great answer. You must be at the wrong rally. But think of the mindset of a person that says that in this context. Is that how far the Democrats have left the reservation? Is that how far they've moved off American traditions and institutions? We always hear about the importance of institutions and maintaining those institutions to keep a nice historical level-minded government and population. But she literally, in many ways, insulted Christians. And then the crowd cheered. Now, she may back away from that. She may walk back those statements. But who says something like that? What part of her heart was so dismissive of the greatest gift this country's ever received that she would say something like that and not be concerned about how badly it could hurt her? That's how lost their party is. Because when she said it, she didn't think it would hurt her. When she said it, pardon the pun, she was preaching to the choir, and they ate it up. And it goes to show if there was a redeeming quality, or for that matter, a single quality, redeem it or not, that separates, I think, Republicans and Democrats in this race, is that one party's become wholly secular, and the other party is still maintaining some degree of religion. Strange. It used to not be that way. The Democrats were always a party that, even though I disagreed greatly, they at least gave a nod to Americans' Christian, Judeo-Christian founding and understandings. This wasn't a nod. It was a scissor kick to the gut, is what it was. And she said it. Now, here's the thing. I'm not trying to make too much out of this. I'm concerned, though, that a major political party would allow this to happen, and at least none of them criticize her at all. Now, J.D. Vance was campaigning, I guess, a day or two after that in Wisconsin on Sunday. Same thing happened. Somebody yelled, "Jesus is King." Now, that may have been staged. I don't know. That seems very peculiar to me that would happen. But I don't care, because the way he handled it was the way it should have been handled, the way it has been handled for the last 200 plus years in this country. His response basically is, yes, that's right. Jesus is King. Now, look, I don't give a lot of credibility to politicians, especially when it comes to religion. And I'll be the first to tell you that we're all flawed and we all make mistakes, and I don't want to be too judgmental for anybody. But at least Vance had the good sense to answer the question the way it should have been answered, the way the population expects it to be answered. Now, I would think a political rule of thumb here is that candidates, if they're trying to get elected, that they should probably never offend a large group of voters, especially this close to an election. Think about the Catholics make up about 1/4 of the people in this country, and that's a major misstep. That's a major misstep. Now, Trump had his own missteps.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the difference between the two. I think there's a substantial difference between the two. Trump says things that are crude, and frankly, it offends me.
Yeah, at
I'm
times.
just going to listen. If you come on,
Yeah.
Now I'm voting for him, and I love him, and I hope he wins. But some of the things he says, maybe he shouldn't. No, he shouldn't be saying some of these things with children in the audience at his campaign rallies. No, it doesn't mean we're not going to support him. We still want him to win. But compare. It's not the crude nature of the remark that's the problem. It's the dismissive nature of an entire religion, and he's never done that.
Not once.
He's always been very open about standing with Christians, about standing with Catholics, Now, he may say things that are crude, irreverent, problematic, offensive, but he's never done anything quite like this, right?
No.
You see the big difference, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would rather her have been crude. I would rather her have been, somehow vulgar, but not dismissive. Because when you're dismissive, especially in this liberal mindset, remember, liberals always say we're supposed to accept every viewpoint. We're supposed to be super tolerant, right?
Yes.
But then on this one viewpoint, incredibly hurtful, incredibly dismissive, it tells me a lot about the way they see the world. They don't want Catholics or Christians to be a part of their worldview. I guess they're concerned there's going to be some control exerted over them, which leads to my next point. Just because we're fighting for a traditional mindset doesn't mean it's going to be mandated. Conservatives value liberty. We respect freedom, and what adults do, even if it's offensive, should be their right to do these things. Do you disagree with that?
No.
Okay, so if an adult wants to go out and sin, I don't have to like it, but I'm not going to pass a law to stop it.
Nor should we,
because when you live in the land of liberty, a land of freedom, people are going to behave in ways that we don't always agree with. That doesn't mean you use the force of government to stop it. So we recognize we're not all about theocracy and this forced mandate from above that people have to live a certain life. That's no way to be. That's not America. Maybe Saudi Arabia, maybe some of those countries, but that's not America. But we still recognize the importance of the institution and recognize the importance of personal walks and community when it comes to religion. I don't think she does anymore. So that's the first thing she did. Completely dismissive. Wasn't just crude or rude or vulgar, just dismissive. You must be at the wrong rally, blah, 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 whatever. And then this Al Smith dinner in New York. I guess you saw that as well.
I did.
It's a pro-Catholic, pro-charity event in New York. And every presidential hopeful, with the exception of Mondale, has attended this during presidential cycle years.
What happened to Mondale?
Well, that's the point. What a strange comparison. Mondale gets swept off the map, loses 49 states, barely won his own, and she decides to copy that for some reason. But again, think about it. It's like a 1-2 punch in the nose if you're a Catholic in this country. And I'm hoping they're paying attention. I'm hoping they see this. I'm hoping they don't just sit it out the way we keep hearing some religions or some Christians are going to sit it out. But she said these things, and then she dismisses the Catholic charity ball and auction. She did send a video, and it was
video.
Did you see the video?
I did not.
She sent a video. Remember Molly Shannon from Saturday Night Live?
Oh, I did see it. I didn't realize it was for that.
Yeah, which. Again,
wow.
are they? Who is running her campaign? I know they're trying to be clever and cute, but I'm fairly certain quite a few Catholics don't see Molly Shannon's character. What did she play? Mary Catherine Gallagher. That was the name of the character. She was this hyperactive Catholic schoolgirl. I'm sure they don't see that as stereotypical or somewhat objectionable or problematic. I don't understand what she's doing down the stretch. Now, I'm happy she's doing it, because I think Trump has an edge, but it's getting super, super weird. Have you ever considered this? Again, I don't want to be on this all day. There's a big difference between secular America and religious America. And the divide is on every issue. It's not just one issue. If I were to say to you, look, I just want to believe what I want to believe. You can still do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to pass any law interfering with you whatsoever. You enjoy your life, love who you want to love, whatever. Would you say that's a fair deal?
I think it is a fair deal, yes.
What if I said in exchange for that, you got to leave me alone and let me do whatever? What if I said that? Do you think that would be a fair deal?
I think it's 100% a fair deal.
I don't think the left sees it that way.
They don't, and it's proven time and time again with their actions.
I don't think they see it that way. It seems to me, in some respects, that Chesterton was right. G.K. Chesterton was a British thinker, philosopher, brilliant Christian mind. And he once said, when people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything. Now let that sink in. The guy's brilliant. If you've ever read his work, absolute brilliant human being. When people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing, they believe in anything. Overwhelmingly, speaking, I may be stereotypical here, but from an overwhelming statistical standpoint, you tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, is it secular people or Christian people or religious people that say that men can give birth?
It's secular people.
Is it secular people or religious people that say the females should be allowed to compete in sports? Males compete in female sports.
That would be secular.
What about those that believe that young girl can claim she's a young boy and immediately, even though she's 10, place her on all sorts of hormone blockers? Is that a secular position or a religious position?
Secular.
What about the position that was willing to keep kids out of school for 2 years during COVID? Remember that?
Yeah.
Is that a secular or religious position?
Secular.
What about forcing 2-year-olds to wear masks on airplanes? Secular or religious position?
Secular.
What about firing military men and women and police officers and others that dared to say, listen, I don't trust the vaccine, I don't want it? Was that a secular position or a religious position?
Oh, definitely secular.
Was it a secular or religious position that forced bakers or tried to force bakers to bake a cake that offended their sensibilities?
I think you know it's going to be secular.
That tries to make doctors, even though they're Christian doctors, to perform abortions or lose their licenses.
It's sounding like a clean sweep here of
It
secular.
is. You see the problem?
I do.
Chesterton's right. It's not that they don't believe in nothing. They believe in anything. And they can't leave us alone. They won't leave us alone. If they're not trying to educate our kids or tell us what vaccines to take or what foods to eat, they're trying to tell us what guns we can or can't have, or for that matter, how much money I can keep in my paycheck each month, even though I worked for it. They can't leave us alone. Is that a religious movement or a secular movement that's behaving this way?
Let's keep the clean sweep alive. It's secular.
Something's wrong in this country. It's not Christians looking for theocracy to control others. It's the American left using the government. It's a religion of government to control others. They're coercive.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. They worship at the altar of big government. They might want to claim they don't believe in religion. They do believe in religion. They believe in the church of big government. They believe that government should be the end-all, be-all authority on everything. Again, as long as government agrees with what they believe, that's going to always be their thought process.
It's a power struggle. It's a power struggle. And I've tried this. I've had this conversation with my liberal friends. And yes, I have liberal friends. And they don't have an answer for it. Because when I do respectfully just say, look, we'll make this deal right now. I'll leave you alone, but you got to leave me alone. They can't do it. But then they claim in a straight face that they're fighting for liberty and freedom and democracy.
Yeah.
Come on. No. It's control. It's control they want. And that's always going to be the case. And we would recognize that. Maybe that would wake us up. But so far, we're not super awake. By the way, liberals are so hostile to any belief system other than their own. What do they fear in religion? If we promise we're not going to try to control them, I mean, let's be honest. We are not trying to control you. So what's your fear?
Being wrong?
I don't know. I mean, are they just nervous? Are they anxious? Are they... what's the real fear?
Yeah, I'm guessing.
If I believe something, but I'm not going to try to control you, is there any harm, any skin off your back?
No.
That's America, right?
That's what it's supposed to be, yes.
So does that mean do I still have freedom of expression? I mean, can I say what I want to say?
In today's society, no, you
No,
cannot.
maybe not.
You're supposed to be, but in today's society, if you say certain things that go against the liberal ideology, you'll be ostracized.
It's very confusing. It's very confusing. It just seems to me that as we erase or erode, I created a new word.
All that.
You call the dictionary people right now, erade is a combination of erode and erase.
Look, if you're in broadcasting long enough, we're all going to create words from time to time.
Well, here's the thing. It just seems to me that the structures, the things that kept us unified for all these generations in this country, there seem to be three primary. You tell me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm misspeaking because, well, maybe four, but let's talk about it. language,
Mm-hmm.
right? Religion,
Yep.
and not just any religion. Let's not kid ourselves. It's primarily Christianity, right? And a degree of patriotism,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, those three things were something that really kind of held us together. So when my Irish or Scottish ancestors came over, the Irish weren't welcome. The Scottish weren't welcome than the Irish, but the Irish weren't welcome. They had to adapt.
Yes.
They didn't come and speak Gaelic. They tried to assimilate as best they could. Now, they held on to their traditions, certainly, their music, right?
Yes.
Their stories, their names,
Nothing wrong with
their
that.
beliefs, nothing wrong with that. But they wanted to be Americans, and they did a good job trying to assimilate in. The same from other countries all across the world. They came over, Italians, another wave of immigration, and they weren't really welcome. Let's not kid ourselves. A lot of folks didn't want the Catholics here, whether they were Irish or Italian. But they didn't complain. They assimilated, and they learned the language. And we had things in common. What were they again? Language, religion, and patriotism, right? They loved this country. They loved it more than the old country, and they were willing to give up elements of the old country to live here. There was unity in that regard. And so we saw this unity kind of keep us coalesced for years. And we've had our splits and divisions, certainly, but for the most part, there was unity. What happens when you shake those three things up? Or you erode them or erase them, or as I said earlier, erase them, right? What happens if you take language, which we have, and we discount it, we take religion, and we have, and we discount it, and then we can't even agree that the country's a great country. I mean, think about it. The American left fundamentally hates what America has been, right?
Yeah. They want a new America.
And what it presently is.
Yeah.
They hate it. So when you do that and you shake it all up and throw it out there, you have significant division in this country. And then we wonder why there's so many people unhappy. And we wonder why everything's so polarized. But as a conservative, I don't want to force anything on you. I'm suggesting that those norms, and they were norms for an awfully long time, were important to keep us together. And we don't share those norms anymore. So now we're trying to force each other to be together. That may not be a wise approach. I'm going to get to more about that later, but I want to talk about something, strangely enough. The story popped up today, and it got me thinking about not only what we've been talking about with religion, but a general sense of community. September was Suicide Prevention Month. Did you know that?
I did not. No.
Right? We don't talk about it much.
No.
Suicide's it's a very touchy subject.
Taboo, even.
It is. And but it's a real problem.
Yes.
It's a real problem. Did you know right now the rates of suicide are higher than ever before?
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah, just slightly. The numbers themselves are. If you look at the number of suicides that are committed per 100,000 people, it's about 14.7. At the highest point ever, it was right at 15, and that was right after the Great Depression during World War II. I mean, you could imagine that was a pretty tragic time in our country's history. So you had a few more suicides then. But for the most part now, we're reaching an apex.
Mm-hmm.
Something's wrong. Do you know who's committing more suicides than anybody else?
I do not.
50-year-old white man. Stop, let's think through this. That's not because of racism or intolerance or a loss of liberty or freedom. They're miserable. Something's happening. Now, there have been multiple programs put together by the government trying to solve this crisis in this country because people are so miserable. And if it's not the pills, it's the alcohol. And if it's not the alcohol, it's the meth, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are trying to somehow find happiness in all this foolishness because they're miserable. So, all these federal acts, and there have been a bunch. Child Suicide Prevention and Lethal Means Safety Act, Suicide Prevention Act, Resilience of Our Nation's Great Veterans Act, Gay and Lesbian Youth Suicide Prevention Act, all of these acts passed by Congress. I mean, fine, we should do things to help people to make sure they don't make that tragic, last, terrible decision, right?
Yes.
But all of the federal spending in the world doesn't seem to be curtailing suicides. This is where it gets really interesting, right? So, poverty, it used to be argued, was the primary cause. Kind of makes sense in some respects, right? You think people are impoverished, they lose hope. That doesn't seem to be the case. Poverty is basically a third of what it was back in 1941. Yet that rate has remained pretty constant, or at least has increased back to the 41 rate. It's half of what it was in 1950, poverty. So poverty is declining. Suicides are increasing. What's happening? Something psychological, something sociological, right? Have you ever considered maybe is a lack of community?
That makes perfect sense when you think about it.
And maybe the one of the few things that held communities together, like we just talked about, were language, religion, and patriotism. People are disjointed. I mean, I even find myself disjointed. You know, you find yourself often, you get busy at work, right?
Yep.
And you don't have time for much interaction there because, you know, the whole world's falling in half the time, right? And then you leave work and you're exhausted. So the first thing you do is to cut on the computer or the iPhone or the ball game. And it's easy to kind of isolate. But isolation, they say, is as bad. You're going to love this. The Surgeon General a couple of years ago said that isolation and sadness was the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes per day.
Wow.
That's the damage control it causes, right? Now, I know I'm rambling, but I want you to consider something's going on with people. We're not socially intertwined like we were. And social media can't take the place of this. You can have a chat on social media. It's not the same. In fact, it may be worse because these knuckleheads think they can say whatever they want to say without getting punched in the nose, right? So it's a hostile environment. So, you know, you're seeing a lot of people that aren't psychologically healthy. And I think in large part it is because we've discounted the institutions like community and religion that kept us fairly satisfied. You know, you need a social structure to support you. Get this stat. Even though white 50-year-old men are killing themselves at an alarmingly high rate, Hispanics are not. They have a social structure. Now, they're impoverished, and they're coming from across the country to get to a certain place, but they're not suffering in the same degree as others. Structure, community, language, right? Are we falling to pieces?
It's definitely, you can see a difference. I mean, just I can look back to my childhood. You know, my father and my parents, they were close friends to our neighbors. They were close friends to other people in the community. You fast forward to this generation, myself included, I don't really know my neighbors, don't really care to know my neighbors, but that's the difference. That is going back to your point of us losing community because, again, that's just one generation. My parents to me, that's one generation.
Yeah.
Where did the disconnect come?
Well, just keep in mind, individualism, in my mind, is a very important component of the American experiment. I think the individual is the cornerstone of government. I've always believed that. And I think the individual, I don't care what your race is or gender, is worthy of dignity and respect and equal protection of the law. The individual is what matters. But when you unleash the individual and egos and narcissism becomes the rule of the day, or self-adoration, right, the self-worship, what happens? If you take individualism to its extreme and its hyper-individualism, and you allow that ego to control, you do tend to separate yourself from others. And it morphs into something incredibly destructive. Do you know what always tempered hyper-individualism? Religion. Religion. In fact, it was religion that tempered most of our terrible habits. Look, humans are flawed, man. I'm completely messed up, and you are too. You may not admit to it.
No,
but you're
I will
messed
admit
up.
to it.
We have all these issues, right? And yet if we self-police because we believe, it does make us better people and healthier people and happier people. You think about what the Bible teaches, right? Let's just focus on a couple of things. Charity. That's a big deal. Being humble and kind and polite. That's a big deal. To forgive your enemies. Those are big deals. And if you follow that, which we don't always follow the way we should, I'll be the first to tell you.
No.
But if you follow those concepts, it makes you a pretty good citizen, right? A pretty good human being. And it gives you a sense of community. I'm getting to my earlier point here. We reject religion, Ms. Harris. You attack it, you mock it, you ridicule it. Maybe you're part of the problem. And the problem might be so big that no matter how many federal acts you pass, no matter how many times the government passes a piece of legislation or spends $1 billion on something, the problem might be so big that you can't correct it because the human heart can't be corrected by force of law. She's doing more harm to the republic than she knows by discounting the fundamental principles that kept us civil. Civil. We've lost civility because we have jettisoned religion. We should all be more forgiving. We should all be less judgmental, right? Am I on the wrong track here?
No, I think you're on the right track, without a doubt.
But when you're secular minded and it becomes a ball game of sorts and tribalism rules the day, all hell is going to be the eventual result of this. Am I wrong?
No, you're 100% accurate.
So when you wrap all this up in a nice little package, and you see the vice president who is wanting to be the president of the United States, and you see that she's the Democrat nominee, literally speaking not just for a party, but for millions of Americans, and she says something like that, and they applaud, and nobody bats an eye. It just goes to show just how far down this rabbit hole we've gone. Can we recover? That's the question for the day. All right, it's time for a break.
Resort.
All right. Welcome back to Chris McDaniel's America. You're on the Midnight Ride Network. You're home of the anti-establishment movement in this country. Jack, I'm on the way out, a little abbreviated today. I've got to leave. Told you about Chamberlain a few minutes ago, breaking his arm. Well, they're going to have to set it, so I'm going to go back to the hospital and be with him when they're doing that. In the meantime, I thought I would throw a story at you because I know you discussed it the other day, but just how mad can the American left get because Donald Trump made French fries at McDonald's?
It's crazy.
I mean, there's rhyme and reason to this world, and then there's just absolute moon battery. Why do they care? What's the big deal? Why all the accusations? Can you answer that before I get out of here?
I think a large part of it, and I think Reed may have said it before we got started, I think part of it is they didn't think of it themselves. I think they're jealous that this was a decision that they saw worked because, again, Donald Trump went up there to this McDonald's, and of course, they all want to talk about how it's this staged deal, that, it's staged. Of course it was. They closed the McDonald's. They had customers come in. They knew what they were doing when they did this. That's not news, people. There's nothing about that is shocking in any way, shape, or form that this is what they did. Because, again, political things like this are going to be staged, political events like this, because you've got a man who has had 2 assassination attempts on him. Not 1, 2. Just the other week at another rally, they prevented somebody from coming into that rally with weapons that could have been potentially a 3rd attempt on his life. So, of course, they're going to have to shut down the McDonald's. Secret Service is going to have to be there. It's going to be a more controlled environment. I don't think they ever lied about it wasn't going to be a controlled environment, but that seems to be the constant criticism of the left. They want to come out and try to tell us that, well, it was all fake. It was all a photo op. The bottom line is Donald Trump still went into that McDonald's. He still sat down, or he still went to the fry stage. He cooked the fries. He got taught how to do it. He interacted with the employees. He interacted with the customers. He did something that endeared him to average, normal American citizens. And the left, their response is to ridicule that. Their response is to come out and somehow attack Donald Trump for trying to somehow come up with a way to relate to average Americans. Look, you can say what you will about McDonald's. You can talk about how unhealthy it is. You can talk about the merits of the nutritional value of McDonald's, that's a debate for another day. But nobody can argue about the fact that McDonald's is, in fact, an American institution. It is one of those brands like Coca-Cola that when you hear of, you think of Americana. It's a fact. It is one of those brands. So Donald Trump, again, he's painted as, the left wants to paint him as this out of touch, no grasp on reality, because he is a billionaire. How many times have we been told he is a billionaire, so he doesn't understand the common person? His team and himself decide to not just go to a McDonald's, but go to a McDonald's, have Donald Trump put on an apron, go and man the fries, and allow a select number of customers to come through the drive-thru and actually get their meal from Donald Trump. I thought it was a cool moment. I thought it was definitely painted Trump in a different light than what we've seen before. One of my favorites is the person that came up and said that they were nobody, and Donald Trump wouldn't accept that and said, no, you're not nobody. I don't believe that. You flip that on its head, and again, the left, they are screaming about it. They're telling us that this was a failure. I'm not sure that I'm buying that it was a failure, because what I've seen with my own eyes since, I've seen folks going, wow, that was kind of a cool event that Donald Trump had there. That was kind of cool how he set that up. I saw the people on the streets chanting USA right there in the same town because they were excited that Donald Trump did what he did. So no, I'm not buying the argument from the left that somehow this is a failure. Now, they want to sit there again, going back to what I was talking about before. They want to talk about the fact that this was a staged event. But they don't want to talk about all the staged events they've had, because it was just, a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, when vice presidential candidate Tim Walz and Kamala Harris's husband went into a coffee shop or a deli. I don't even remember what it was. You tell me that wasn't staged? Tell me that they just went in? Because you know what they did? They walked away from the counter without paying for their coffee. They didn't even say anything. A staffer had to come up and say, oh, a staffer's coming in to pay for it. They didn't even tell them, hey, look, we're not carrying the cash. We got a staff. That's normal for the candidate or those higher up in the campaign to have someone else come behind them and pay. But normally what you do is you at least make them aware so they don't think that you just walked off with their freebies. But that's what they did in this instance. And they were doing this in a controlled environment that was set up to be a photo op, the same thing that they're lambasting Donald Trump for doing at this McDonald's. It's insane, people, because again, it's two different standards. When you watch the way that they react to Donald Trump, anything he does, they're never going to give him credit. They're never going to say that Donald Trump did something good. They can't say that because, again, right now, they're worried about losing to Donald Trump. So they're not going to come out and say that Donald Trump did anything good. That is their reality of what they're up against. So that's why they're going to continue to go down this. Sorry, I'm starting to get choked up. Live television. Hold on. The reality is they know it was a masterstroke from the Trump campaign. They realized that Donald Trump came up with something that connected with people that they're desperately trying to connect with. Look, when Kamala Harris came on the scene, when she took over for Joe Biden, it was like there was a breath of fresh air for the Democrats. They had this momentum. They felt like they had it wrapped up after they witnessed Donald Trump have his own momentum. They felt like they had snatched it away from him. Anybody that follows elections and has followed cycles understands there's something about peaking, and there's always this concern when you hit a momentum stride, and you'll hear this from multiple people. They'll say, did he peak too soon? That was a legitimate concern about Donald Trump during the summer months after the assassination attempt, after Joe Biden's disastrous debate performance. Even then, when we felt good, there were folks saying, did Donald Trump peak too soon? Is this too early for him to peak? The answer would, yeah, it was too soon. Kamala Harris comes on the scene. She's new, she's fresh, she's young. She's showing this energy. She's taking the old man stage and flipping it on its head against Donald Trump now. So it's a new thing. Hold on again. It's a new thing that we are witnessing when it comes to Donald Trump in this race. Because again, the dynamic is flipped. Now he's the old man and they're pushing it, and they're taking clips of Donald Trump and pulling them out of context so they can try to say, look, maybe he's the one with dementia. Because they saw how effective it was against Joe Biden. They understood that that was a strategy that they could pull off and it could be effective. So she has all this momentum. Everything's starting to go her way, starting to move in the direction that they wanted it to go, because again, Democrats felt like they had their gal. But what they did too, because they also understood, as I've said multiple times throughout multiple media that I do, that she is a less than stellar candidate, that she was an immensely flawed candidate. So what they did to try to cover up for her flaws, they weren't granting television interviews. They were keeping her sheltered. You remember in 2018 when they talked about Joe Biden running a campaign from his basement. Well, she wasn't running one from her basement, but it wasn't that far different of a strategy from what we had seen Joe Biden do. The only difference was she was more willing to be at like a rally or something to that effect. What she wasn't willing to do was face the media. She still hasn't given a formal press conference since she took over as nominee. Not one formal press conference. She's given some television interviews. They've been disastrous for her. Once she started to go on these interviews, and I think the Democrats felt emboldened after her debate with Donald Trump. I think they felt like because she was able to get Donald Trump to take the bait, no matter how much we like Donald Trump, he took the bait that she layered out for him and got off of topic. So in many assets, she can claim victory to that debate. Doesn't mean I like her. Doesn't mean I agree with anything that she said. But again, as I've said on the Right Side radio program, a lot of debates aren't won on substance. They're won on style. They're won on style. And she, that night, had more style. Personally, I thought it was a little bit of a push, but I can see the argument saying that Donald Trump didn't win that debate. And I think the Democrats felt emboldened after that. They were like, oh, wow, Kamala's the real deal. We don't have to hide her anymore. Because if you noticed, it was after that debate performance, that's when they ramped up the television interviews. She starts going on TV. She starts giving interviews. Most of them are kind of fluff. None of them are portraying her as this intellectual that they want her to be. Then you start to find out some more cracks in the armor. And remember, this Kamala Harris is painting herself as the champion of the middle class. Kamala Harris is telling us that she can relate to me. Look, if I'm not middle class, I'm the class below it. Just being honest, I'm not a rich man. I don't have a ton of wealth. So I am the very person that she's wanting to talk to. I'm the very person that she's trying to reach at this point in time. So she's supposed to be my champion because she grew up middle class. She knows what it's like. Well, then you dive into her history. Guess what? You find out she didn't grow up middle class. She grew up upper class. She might not have been the richest of the rich elite, but she definitely wasn't living she wasn't living a middle class lifestyle, going to private schools, living in posh neighborhoods right off of golf courses. That's not middle class people. She got caught lying there. She got caught fabricating her backstory. The media, of course, didn't want to talk about that. They didn't want to push that. They wanted to try to stay away from that. But what they couldn't stay away from was her failures in these interviews, because she'd go up there and she wasn't performing well. That is when we started to see the tide change. And then, of course, came her disastrous 60 Minutes interview. That interview was one that CBS had to edit one of her answers because how poorly she answered. She answered it with a rambling word salad, which is pretty much what she's now known for. Is she is the word salad candidate. So yeah, she came out in that regards, and CBS edited her statement. We would have never known that they had edited her answer to a question if they hadn't played the full answer on a promo for it. So whoever was in charge there at CBS that slipped up and allowed the actual answer to air in the promo, I doubt that guy has a job anymore. I bet you that he's been run out of the office when you think about it. So yeah, she's got issues. Now, that also has led to people asking for CBS to release the transcript of the interview, because if they edited that question, what else did they edit in this interview? What else did they try to fix for? Well, she goes from that interview and she decides, you know what, I'm going to jump in the lion's den. I'm going to go on Fox. I'm going to sit down with Bret Baier and I'm going to give an interview on Fox. I don't know how many of you watched that interview. I'm a glutton for punishment. I watch the other side. And in this instance, I wanted to see how she did in that interview. She did poorly, people. Even those on the left. I found an article from The Hill, which is not a conservative website, that was talking about how she dropped the ball in that interview. So it's not just our side of the equation that thought that was a bad look for her. She went on there. She was combative. She didn't want to answer certain questions. And it was obvious that she was out of her element. She's gotten used to the interviews with the Howard Sterns of the world, with the Stephen Colberts, with the women of The View, who are all just fawning over her, glowing over her, asking her softball after softball. She's faced with a hard-hitting question. You see why they kept her sheltered for so long. You see why they've kept her under wraps. That's why the momentum has changed. And then you see Donald Trump connecting with the American public by going to a McDonald's and putting on an apron and actually fixing fries. Something Kamala claimed that she used to do, that she claims she worked at a McDonald's, which that claim is under dispute at the moment. Donald Trump even said that he worked the fry station 15 minutes longer than Kamala Harris did. Again, I saw a liberal commentator ask, well, why would she lie about working at McDonald's? Well, why would she lie about being middle class? She's trying to paint herself as something that she is not. She's trying to paint herself as an individual that she is not. Because she's trying to connect with us. She's trying to connect with the middle class, and it's not working. Then you factor in another problem that she has. That problem is with black males. We talked about this last week. Now, do I believe that the numbers are as skewed as they're trying to say they are? Do I believe that they're all going to flow Donald Trump's way? I don't know that I buy that, but they obviously feel concerned about their numbers with African-American males, because if you watch the way they're going, but the way they're going about it, once again, to Chris's point from earlier, I want to know who is running her campaign, because they should never be allowed anywhere near a campaign again, because it's a comedy of errors. Their answer is to go up there and try to shame these black men into voting for her. They're going to say that if you don't vote for Kamala Harris, it's because you're sexist. They already say that anyway. And again, I would vote for a female in the Margaret Thatcher mold in a heartbeat. I don't vote for a candidate based on the color of their skin. I don't vote for a candidate based on their sex. I don't care about any of that. I care about the issues. But they want to wrap it all up in female. I am woman, hear me roar. That is all they see. So therefore, if you don't support their candidate, it can't be because she's wrong on the issues. It has to be simply because you're a sexist. And that's the approach they're taking with the African American males right now. They're trying everything they can to try to push these African American males to vote for Kamala Harris. I don't think they're going to be bullied. They may not show up to vote for Donald Trump, but they quite possibly, probably, are going to stay home. And if they stay home, that's bad news for Kamala Harris because, again, it's just not a good look for her. When you break down several things and when you ask yourself, why are they attacking Donald Trump's McDonald's visit? Because they know it was working. They know it was working. Again, when they go down that path and they start to attack certain things, it's because they want to try to destroy the credibility of it. They know it resonated with people. They see what I said a couple of weeks ago when I hosted the show for Chris, and I said, I think we're seeing the tide turn. I think we're seeing the momentum go back to Donald Trump. Nothing in the last couple of weeks has changed my opinion of that. Matter of fact, a lot of the things that I've seen are backing that up. Had a friend text today who has been a political consultant before, and he pointed out that it looks like Kamala Harris is following the Bob Dole model of campaigning in states like Florida and Texas, where she doesn't have a shot at winning that state. But there's some congressional races that Democrats might need some help in. So maybe she's spending time there so they can focus on the House, so they can focus on the Senate. And if that's the case, we all know what happened to Bob Dole in 96. He didn't win the race. Again, as I've said multiple times, nobody knows who's going to win this race. So I'm not predicting, but that could be an indicator because, again, it is odd knowing what the battleground states are, knowing what those states need to be for you, and you are shifting your focus this close to the election away from the battleground states. It's an interesting strategy, to say the least. I'm questioning whether or not they believe that she can win any longer. They've seen the comedy of errors. They've seen her failure to connect. I thought she was going to connect because I thought she was more charismatic than it appears that she is. When she first came on the scene, I think everybody knew. I think we were all nervous because she was an unknown, even though we knew, based on what we had seen from her in the past, that she was very flawed. I dubbed the nickname for her on the right side Sesame Street Harris. I dubbed that for her after she gave an interview on a radio show in which she talked about Russia and Ukraine, and she spoke about them like she was talking to kids on a Sesame Street show, where she goes, Ukraine is a country and Russia is a larger country. It was so absurd the way that she was talking to the listeners like they were children that, again, that's where I dubbed the nickname Sesame Street Harris for. She is a completely flawed candidate. She was never ready for prime time. And we're seeing that unfold in real time. And then you factor in her choice of running mates and Tim Walz. He's a comedy of errors of himself. The guy, when cornered with the fact that he clearly lied about being in China at certain points in his life. Now, no doubt he had gone to China, but he claimed he was there during the Tiananmen Square protest, which he was not. And when he was asked about it on a debate stage, He didn't answer it. At one point, he said, I'm a knucklehead at times. What's that even mean? I mean, who's coaching these people? Who's coaching these people? When it's so bad that 60 Minutes has to edit your interviews just so that way they can try to bail you out because you've looked so terrible. You've looked so terrible. It's crazy because we're watching this happen in real time and we're seeing these multiple things. Now, to the 60 Minutes interview, I don't know if you guys had seen this yet, but 60 Minutes released a statement explaining their edit job on Harris's question. They tried to claim that the statement, that Trump's claim that it selectively edited the interview was patently false. 60 Minutes gave an excerpt of our interview to Face the Nation that used a longer section of her answer than that on 60 Minutes. Same question, same answer, it continued, but a different portion of the response. When we edit any interview, whether a politician, an athlete, or a movie star, we strive to be clear, accurate, and on point. The portion of her answers on 60 Minutes was more succinct, which allows time for other subjects in a wide-ranging 20-minute-long segment. Nobody's buying that response. Nobody's believing that 60 Minutes did it because they were trying to cut down on time. Are you buying that? I don't think I am, or I know I'm not. 60 Minutes, there's an old adage in politics. If you're explaining, you're losing. And the fact that they went on to explain this in the first place tells you that they know they messed up. Again, it's the answer to a question. You edited it. You got caught because you screwed up and gave Face the Nation the complete answer. And that's the reason why people are questioning, what else did you edit in the full interview? And it's clear that the long answer was not a good look for Kamala Harris. It was a bad look for the vice president. And yet, you cleaned it up. It sounded better. Sounded better on the full 60-minute interview. How many of her other answers had to be cleaned up? How many of her other answers had to be fixed? These are the things. So, of course, they have to ridicule Donald Trump going to McDonald's. They have to attack the fact that the man went and salted the fries. They have to attack the fact that the man worked the drive-through window because they don't have anything else. They don't have any other answers for any of this because they understand that he is gaining momentum. So they have to attack. They have to try to discredit. Donald Trump campaign, they released their own statement saying that 60 Minutes just admitted to doing exactly what President Trump accused them of doing. They edited in a different response from another part of her answer to make Kamala Harris sound less incoherent than she really was. Their statement is not a denial. It is an admission that they did exactly what they were accused of. And it was 100%. They admitted to doing it. So again, when Trump goes to McDonald's, I hear he fixed the ice cream machine. Did y'all hear he fixed the ice cream machine? Because I heard he finally fixed the ice cream machine there. Some people may not know it's a long-standing joke that McDonald's ice cream machine is never working. There's a meme going around where folks are saying if he fixed the ice cream machine, the race is over. So, but again, outside of the joke, they have to attack because that's all they've got now. They've seen how flawed their candidate is. I've laid it out for you by pointing out why 60 Minutes did what it did. I've laid it out for you by pointing out her failures, her less than ideal interviews that she's given. She has come across as one of the worst candidates we've seen in a long time. Remember when they were trying to tell us that J.D. Vance was the worst vice presidential candidate of all time? And then he went on that debate and proved to everyone that that wasn't the case. Plain and simple, they're attacking Trump on this for the mere reason that Trump did something that they know was working, they know was resonating. So they were trying to force their way and force Donald Trump to look bad by being negative because they know their candidate is doing a great job in making them look negative on their own. Guys, it's been fun finishing up this show. Again, we want to send our thoughts and prayers there to Chris's youngest son, Chamberlain. Chamberlain, we're hoping that your pain goes away and that you heal up really fast. I'm Jack Fairchild's closing up shop for Chris McDaniel's America tonight. We'll see you again real soon.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new My Pillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit MyPillow.com.